Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. Today, you're going to meet Joyce Yarrow. Hey, Joyce.
Hi, Karen. It's great
I'm
to be
so
here.
I'm so glad to have you. I'm really glad that you could join us. And she's here to share her historical novel, hailed as a dazzling journey through time. And it's called Zahara and the Lost Books of Light. And this is going to hold you spellbound, according to reviews, until the very end. So that sounds really good. It sounds really intriguing. So tell us a little bit about the book, Joyce.
Well, the premise of the book is kind of interesting because it's way back in history, like 1498 in Spain. The Inquisition burned hundreds of thousands of books. They were Hebrew, Arabic, some in Latin. Um, and so the premise of the book is that some of these tomes, codexes were rescued. And they were hidden away in an underground library in Spain and guarded by these librarians through the generations until today. And that's basically the premise is what happened to these books. And the protagonist, Alienor Crespo, finds the librarians and discovers that this is also related somewhat to her family tree.
Wow. And isn't that a timely topic for us today? Here we were, people were burning books, so long ago, and here we are banning books again. We seem to not learn our lessons.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we write historical fiction is to try to relive some of this, relitigate some of it, and so that it's not forgotten.
Yeah. So what inspired you to why this story? What
Well, it's interesting. I got off an airplane coming from California. My husband was at the airport and he handed me a newspaper and he said, I think your story is related to this. He knew I was writing about Spain, but I was writing about medieval Spain and looking for a modern story. I like to have two time frames. And there was a picture of a woman named Doreen Alhadeff, and she was going to Spain to get her citizenship as a descendant of the Sephardic Jews that were expelled from Spain in 1492. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I need to meet Doreen, and I did. We had coffee, and she told me her story, and gradually I created a character really based on her experience, who goes to Spain and discovers, that her family tree also includes some of these librarians. And she's a journalist, so of course this is an exciting story. And she's the kind of journalist who likes to get into her own stories. This seems to happen to her a lot. Like she's writing about something, and then all of a sudden she is living that something.
yeah, wow. So on my father's side, the family are Sephardic Jews from Portugal and Spain.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Some small world.
Yeah. Yeah. As I explore her family tree, I meet so many people, from so many different backgrounds because we all are related. And that's one of the really fun things I find as a writer, is finding these connections between people.
Yes, 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 yes. So what type of woman so pronounce your protagonist's first name again for me?
Alienor, and her last name is Crespo.
Eleanor. That's beautiful. So what kind of woman is she? Tell us a little bit about her personality and some of her traits and what do you love about her?
What I love about her is that she has a lot of contradictions in her life, and yet she manages to balance them. And I guess we can all relate to that. And that she's a journalist. She's a real just the facts kind of person at times. But she also has a gift that came from her Sephardic grandmother, Nona, that she has second sight and she can see through the eyes of her female ancestors. And so
Mm,
she goes, they're called visitas, which means in Ladino, Judaic Spanish, it means visit. And so she visits these time frames and is able to experience them herself. And no time passes in the present when this happens. So it's a little bit magical. So I call it
mm.
magic realism. And so she balances these. At first, she was very frightened about these experiences, but gradually she's realized that they contribute a lot, even to her journalism, because she learns things that then she follows up on and that go into her current writing. So that's one of the things I like about her, and also that she's very intrepid, sometimes almost to the point of foolhardiness. But I think
Mm.
she just gets so involved in the story that she's writing that she would just do anything to get to the truth underneath it, the underlying factors.
Cool. I like her already. She sounds like a really good character.
Which I'm hanging out with her for 3 books now. I'm starting on the third. So yeah, I like her too.
Excellent. So this is the second book in the series,
It's the first. Sahara and the Lost Books of Light is the
the
first.
first one. And then you've already finished the second one and you started a third?
That's right.
Wow. Now is the second one, does that have a publication date?
That has been published by All Bilingual Press in 2024. It hasn't been out very long. And that one is called Stolen Lives. And it's about the children that the Republicans in Spain sent to the USSR during the Spanish Civil War uh, to hopefully protect them, but they didn't know World War II was coming. And so it's
Mm,
about what happened. That's why it's called Stolen Lives, because these children were really sent at the age of 3 or 4 into a very difficult situation. And some of them, I get curious about what happened when they came back to Spain, also because they were viewed with a lot of suspicion as like Russian spies, but they
mm.
weren't. And so I evolved a plot. I went and I also involved the stolen babies scandal in Spain. That started during Franco's rule when they would just take children and put them in Christian homes. And so it would take Jewish children and or any, they just viewed people that had a different political viewpoint as being defective, actually genetically defective. So this has a lot of awful resonances with our own country, going back a few hundred years. So I got really involved in writing this story too. And I met a woman in Spain who runs an organization that's called SOS Bebés Robados, which is stolen babies, and she's been looking for her own daughter for many, many years. And I mean, there's really literally maybe 30,000 of these children. So, I found some hope in the story too of people that could be reunited. Uh,
Yes.
and also a huge lesson in history that we need to pay attention, that it's not only words, that words can lead to terrible actions. And the time that we live in right now, we need to be really aware about that, and hopefully be able to head off the worst aspects of it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So what's your connection to Spain?
Well, I grew up in the Bronx, and so I don't have a real strong connection to Spain, but to Puerto Rico I do because my neighbors were all from Puerto Rico, who I hung out with and played with as a child. And I just got really interested in this story because of the burning of the books. And it just seemed to be a perfect place to set it and to explore what happens, after the Inquisition, and did people manage to survive and to save these books and themselves for that matter?
Themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes, just going to a place that's very far off uh, can give you a lot of perspective on where you live. And so now I've come back, and the third book is set in Seattle, which is my hometown now. So
Wow,
I'm really
yeah.
excited about that because I've never set a
Okay,
book. I've set books in New York City, in Russia, in India, Spain, and now here in Seattle.
oh my goodness. So how many novels do you have out?
I think there's 6.
That's awesome. I'm a fellow Bronx girl.
Are
Well,
you?
yes, born and raised in the Bronx.
Oh my
We left
goodness.
my husband and I, he was the boy next door
Oh.
uh, and we left the Bronx when we were, 20, 21 years old, something like that. But that's where we born and raised. Yeah.
Yeah, the southeast
It was
part is
something I
where I
liked
was.
about you. You like Spain, you like the Bronx, New York, and I love Seattle. So
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we have to come
this is
visit.
all good. So when you were researching any of the books, but this particularly this series, um, was there anything that you uncovered that just really startled you, or you thought was super cool, or something that you could share with the with our audience?
Well, the Doreen, she went and got her citizenship. And then about a year later, once the book was out, because I based my protagonist on her, I was really nervous about how she would react because she knew that she was basically a character in the book under a different name. And then I made up all the stuff about her. But she really liked it and she gave it to a bunch of her friends. And then I got an invitation from her. She was going to be knighted by the King of Spain, by one of his representatives. Over in Bellevue, which is a suburb of Seattle, because of her contribution to helping Jewish people become citizens of Spain after all that had happened to them. Because Spain just decided that they were going to open their doors and sort of try to make up for this huge wrong that they did.
Horrible, yes.
And so I was so impressed and surprised by the whole thing. And so my husband and I got all dressed up and we went to the knighting of Doreen. And I would say that was a big surprise for her
Yeah,
too.
I love that. That's a story in itself.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you're working on the third book of the series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how far along, where are you in that process?
I'm still in the research stage where I've written one chapter, and then I went back to doing research because I got some new ideas, and basically it makes a connection between the Japanese Americans who lived in Seattle during World War II, many of whom were interned. They were sent to camps, and so I've been going out into the community and meeting people, talking about the experiences of their grandparents and in some cases, I'm meeting people who were born in the camps, that are still with us. And then, I'm connecting it uh, to the present, because we have Guantanamo and we have all these other places where they're sending people. And so I thought it would be interesting to write a story that really connects the threads. And again, it's kind of a painful story, like Stolen Lives was, but there's also a lot of hope in it because of
Yeah,
the allies. And so the by allies I mean friends, not
I knew
superpowers.
what you meant. Yes.
Because of the allies that emerged. So yesterday I had lunch with some people in the international district, and I was told about this Jewish family that kept the possessions and kept a building that belonged to a Japanese American family that was interned. And all during the internship, they kept their building. They sent them bills so they could pay and nothing would be foreclosed on. And basically, they could come back and resume their lives. And this was rare. In many cases, property was stolen and things like that. So I was
Wow.
looking for those positive stories, and all of a sudden, talk about surprises. I'm just having lunch with someone, and they say, "Oh yeah, our building, we wouldn't even have it if it wasn't for this family that helped us."
Wow.
So yeah, if you kind of keep an eye out for it, you may start with a story that's a real wrencher, but you also find some hope in there. And to me, that's a must. Even when I'm reading, I've got to find some reason to keep reading, right?
Yes, yes. I write a lot of tragic stories, and but there always has to be hope. There has to be hope and there has to be love.
Yeah.
That's what that's one of my rules. I don't know how my Sephardic Jewish family, survived because they ended up they they were there um until like 1800 or so they survived from the
Yeah.
Inquisition and all of that and stayed, or they came from someplace else and settled there, but I don't know
That would
what
be
the full
interesting.
story
Yeah,
is.
sometimes it's hard to find out to do that kind of research. And I
Yeah, but
know
it
in
makes me
my
want to read your book though.
oh, I want to read yours too. I was looking at Grace. That's going to be the first one I read. It looks really
Yeah, so
interesting.
that's the family. Her husband, his people came from Spain and Portugal, and they were Sephardic Jews. from Spain and Portugal, and they were sea people, they were merchants. So they sailed the Caribbean, with their wares,
Oh,
trading their
yeah.
wares, and that's how he ended up in Jamaica. Yeah.
They might
Because,
have been pirates.
people people
There were a lot of Jews that left Spain that became pirates and got their revenge. So it's like a whole other book.
could be. So when you think about your own writing, is there some author or some books that just had a real big impact on the way you write or the way that makes you want to write?
Well, Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, which I read
Mm,
at a pretty young age, and then of course saw the movie that Truffaut made that was incredible. And in many ways, Zahara takes off from the last scene of that book. And I didn't even realize it until I'd written the book. And I thought, oh my goodness, this, because at the end of that book, you have the river people and they're walking along the river, and each one of them has a book that they're memorizing because all the books are being burned by the firemen. And so this is hope that he gives us at the end of the book. And so then I started thinking about the books that were burned during the Inquisition, and that just led me into thinking, oh, wow, this is a real inspiration for me. And then another book that I think really influenced me was Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, because
mm.
it gives this view into the mind of the antagonist. And every book needs a really convincing antagonist. And sometimes it's hard to come up with them. You don't want to make people seem so bad and everything, but you've got to bite the bullet, and create a truly a realistic antagonist. And that's definitely what he did in Crime and Punishment.
Were there any books that you've recently read that you could recommend to our audience?
A Gentleman in Moscow,
Oh,
which was,
yes.
yes, that's become very popular. And I'm really glad because it is so beautifully written. And it's also a way of re-examining history. And what was it that Kierkegaard said, that we live forward, but we understand backwards. So we have to turn around and look to understand what we've experienced. And I think he does an incredible job with that and personalizing what happened, right after the Russian Revolution, and just about how even people who were part of the ruling class that were the czarists and everything, they were just people. And that's the
Yeah.
thing that we keep forgetting, that we think there's another side, but there really is just one side, which is all of us. And then I read No No Boy by John Okada, which
Hmm.
is
Don't know
about
that one.
young Japanese man who was interned during World War II who refused to serve in the military for various
Mm.
reasons. And he regrets his decision, actually. So it's a very powerful book, and written by an author who never got much recognition. And then finally, the book's been republished. So that's a real, I just love books that give you a look into someone's thinking and into their life that you just never in a million years you would meet someone like that. You've got to meet them in a book.
Read them in a book.
So
Yes, I
the
love that.
Tremont Public Library in the Bronx, that's responsible for me being loving books so much, because I think that every writer is primarily a reader. You've got to start there. And it was just such a marvelous library, and it was a haven for all of us in a rather violent neighborhood.
Yeah, mine was on Carpenter Avenue in the Bronx. So I was the Northeast Bronx, and we were allowed to borrow 7 books a week. And that was the maximum. And so every week I would go to the
I can
library
see you carrying them.
and carrying my 7 books home. But it wasn't a very good library. It was a poorly
Ah,
stacked, so I literally went through all of the books for my age, and so then I started reading books that were older, were older for me, and my mother got very concerned. But yes, we start out as readers, don't we? We start out as readers. So Joyce, first of all, it's so lovely to meet you. This has been such a lovely, lovely meeting. How can our viewers find you? I know you can find all of her books in any place that you buy books. And if you don't, or borrow, and if you don't see them, ask for them.
Oh,
But
yes,
how
please
can
do.
they, right? But how can they find you?
Well, I have a website, joyceyarrow.com, and it also has a contact page if anybody wants to write to me. I always love to hear from readers. And I am in a lot of libraries. I've put, we talk about libraries as the heroes of many of my books now. And so I've noticed that they're really starting to be purchased by libraries. And so I've kind of made a special effort to do that and to do programs at libraries because they are really my heroes. So please either find my books on Amazon or at your local bookstore is really the best place. It's online at almost every bookstore, and then they can order it. It's published by All Bilingual Press here in Seattle. Wonderful press.
Oh, this is so good. Well, thank you. I hope you all have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have enjoyed it. I hope that you will go to Joyce's website and contact her. You'll buy her books, you'll write reviews, you'll go to your library, and if they don't have it, you'll ask them to tell them that there's libraries and librarians are the heroes of her books so that they will get them. And when you do get in touch with Joyce, please tell her that you met her on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And thank you so much for watching. Bye, everybody.
This has been delightful.